In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen. Well, hello, dear ones. I'm here at a hotel at the Parish Life Conference in Tucson, Arizona, and I'm with one of my favorite priests in the world, Father Peter Heers, and they're coming out with a new publication, the Acts of the Eighth Ecumenical Synod, or Eighth Ecumenical Council. Mm-hmm. I understand the actual text, when it's finalized, will be longer than this because of all the notes and everything.
Yes. This is just the Acts, and then we're going to be publishing notes, introduction by a contemporary scholar 40 years ago, and the notes and introduction by Dositheos of Jerusalem. So this is going to be another 150 pages.
Fantastic. I told Father Peter that this is a book that I've been waiting probably about 15 years to be published. I've been hoping that somebody would publish these Acts, but right off the bat, someone's going to look at this and say, but Father, I've been told in what seem like official catechisms, there are only 7 ecumenical councils.
Yes, this is what
what is this thing about an 8th ecumenical council?
You know, it's so important. That's why we did this conference down in Alabama, and we translating the Acts, and we're spending so much time on it, and it's extremely important for us. Even if don't get hung up on the number or hung up on the officialdom. Look at the history, look at the theology, look at how important it is. You can't understand the Great Schism if you don't understand what happened at and after the Eighth Ecumenical Council. But to get to the question, is there an Eighth Ecumenical Council? Absolutely, the Orthodox Church never doubted it, and we have a number of historical events that happened from that time to the day which confirms that the Church always accepted it. If you go, for instance, to the encyclical of the patriarchs to reply to the Pope in 1848, which was all the 4 patriarchs, and in that letter that they sent, it says it commemorates this as the Eighth Ecumenical Council under Photios. We have saints that have commemorated as such. We have the council that overturned Florence commemorated and referred to it as the Eighth Ecumenical Council. We have canonists throughout the early, 300 years of the second millennium who commemorated it as the Eighth Ecumenical Council. So the question is really not, is it the Eighth Ecumenical Council? Do we commemorate it? But how did we lose consciousness of it, and why? When did we stop talking about it as the Eighth Ecumenical Council?
That is the question, isn't it?
Yeah, it's strange.
So we have the 8th, and many would also argue a 9th, correct? With the 3 councils,
yes.
So the Palamite councils.
Yes, and again, people are going to get caught up on technicalities. Well, when and how was it ratified by the next ecumenical council? That's a little bit of a fallacy. The Church does that, absolutely, and confirms it, but it confirms it in other ways too. It confirms it first and foremost, most essentially, by accepting the teaching and making it its own. And then when St. Gregory Palamas is commemorated in this and put as the commemoration of the second week of Great Lent as a continuation of the Sunday of Orthodoxy, it's obvious that the Church has embraced his theology. That they glorified him in 10 years, which was unprecedented, is an example that they accepted his theology. And then if you want something more technical, look at the fact that it was an emperor. And so one of the reasons why we call it an ecumenical council, and it's not just a council, is because of the whole empire, the emperor and all the empire was ratified it and accepted it. So it has all of that.
So if the proclamation of the council is universally accepted just as much as the 7 councils before it, is this really just a question of semantics, whether we term it ecumenical or not? But on a level of, I don't know if we want to use the word authority, but as far as the proclamation being official for the Church, it shares everything in common with the 7 ecumenical councils.
Yeah, and I would say that there's a couple of things we should just point out immediately, which will point to the fact that it's not only essentially accepted, but it's officially accepted. First of all, the 7th Ecumenical Council was ratified by which council? And why do we consider it ecumenical?
Right.
The 8th. The 8th. So if you don't accept, it's a little bit of a circular reason. If you don't accept, why do you accept the 7th? On what basis? Well, because the 8th ratified it. So besides that, we have historical confirmation in the West. Up until and after the schism, they were still recognizing as the Eighth Ecumenical Council.
So this is what I really want to talk about. Before we talk about that, though, one last question about the acceptance of this council. Are there saints who have recognized it and named it as the Eighth Ecumenical Council?
Sure. We have that right now. I have to go to this book and be reminded by which saints commemorated. I think St. Mark of Ephesus commemorates it, but we have a section in this. This is another book we published recently, The Divine Service of the Eighth Œcumenical Council, written recently. The service was written recently and commemorated and used in the Church of Greece in several dioceses under Metropolitan Seraph and also Metropolitan Herothos Vlachos and others, and they're celebrating the feast. And then we have a section in here, I'm trying to remind myself, where Saint Nectarios, for instance, commemorates it as the Eighth Ecumenical Council.
I think is one of the most significant ones.
Yes.
It's been so recent.
Yes.
Proposed in 1920.
Saint Nectarios is one of the ones. So this is the one, Saint Nectarios is commemorated in this book with other contemporary scholars.
So this obviously goes to the question of Orthodox and Roman relations. And there's kind of an interesting thing. As I understood it, and I could be wrong about this, as I understood it, part of the papal teachings, ex cathedra, as they say, the infallible teachings, part of the authority of the Pope is in approving ecumenical councils in the West. The Roman Catholics believe that for an ecumenical council to officially be an ecumenical council, it must be approved by the Pope of Rome. And it would be my guess that this would be among the acts of the Pope working ex cathedra in its official capacity as the Pope. I'm guessing.
There'd probably be debate around that, but you would think that is there anything more official for a Pope to do than to accept the council or not, right? Make it the accepted faith.
It seems as official as you could get.
So, I mean, what else? Was there something else besides that?
So as I understand it, with the Eighth Ecumenical Council, there was a much smaller council that happened beforehand that was then condemned by this council.
Yes.
And
869.
Are you suggesting that the Pope at that time actually accepted this as an ecumenical council?
John the Eighth was his name, and he accepted it. In fact, there's some speculation because he was murdered afterwards, and it's very interesting. There's some speculation why was he murdered? The person who took his place was against the council, but he accepted it. And then the person who came after him, eventually it was accepted in the West, but there was back and forth. So the previous Pope to him, who was supportive, was against Photios, Nicholas. I don't remember if it was Nicholas. I don't know if there's a Nicholas the Sixth or Fourth. I can't remember the name, but it's Pope Nicholas. He was the one that was basically condemned not condemned per se, but his stance was condemned at the Eighth Ecumenical Council. He was the Pope during the so-called Eighth Ecumenical Council, which for the West afterwards, like 200 years later, they changed. And they went back to recognizing the previous council, which was condemned by the Eighth Ecumenical Council. And they said, that's the Eighth Ecumenical Council. But they had, for 150 years, accepted the Council under Photios as the Eighth Ecumenical Council. They went along
for how many years?
About 150.
150 years.
Yeah.
So what are the main... I don't like using the word decisions with the ecumenical councils, but what are the main proclamations of the Eighth Ecumenical Council?
So they were dealing with practical and theological matters, and at the heart of it was what was going on in Bulgaria at the time. So the Bulgarian people were being missionized by missionaries sent by St. Photius, but also they were Western missionaries coming down from the Franks. They brought with them the Filioque, and they wanted to impose that and make everybody to accept the Filioque. And in a very heavy-handed way. And of course, the Church in Constantinople reacted very strongly against that and wrote against that. And so this council was basically a reunion council because they had condemned Photius 10 years earlier. Photius was reinstated. And then this council was called. And they came you can tell in the Acts, they came in a way to say like, okay, we're in charge here and we're gonna make everything better again. But nobody in the Acts, you can tell nobody's buying into it. The East, all the other bishops from the East are like, yeah, whatever, okay. But so they end up accepting the council's acts, and in there condemns anyone who would add or subtract to the creed. And obviously, at that time, what was going on? The Filioque. They were trying to impose it on the newly illumined Bulgarians. So it's obvious that they're talking about the Filioque. What else was being added or subtracted to the creed? And Rome was Orthodox at the time. They did not want to add to the creed. They were against it. They went along with the decisions because they had no problem. But there were forces in Northern Europe that wanted to, for the sake of mainly political reasons, they wanted to impose the Filioque to differentiate themselves from Roman Orthodoxy in Constantinople. So in principle, they condemned anyone who would add to the creed. And then in 1009 and then 1014, Rome fell to the desires of the Franks, and they added to the creed. That's essentially the beginning of the Great Schism. The Pope was taken out of the diptychs at that time in Constantinople. And then for 3 decades, the situation went on of basically no interaction, no communion, no concelebration between Constantinople and Rome. And then they had the anathemas in 1054. So it's a grave disservice to any Orthodox theologian or teacher that says that we didn't really know why, when the schism starts. This is like they kind of give this gray area around this. No, it was very clear that they walked away from the Eighth Œcumenical Council and the Creed by adding to the Filioque, and it was immediate the reaction in the East. There was no doubt of what were they doing. They were walking away from the Council and the faith of the Council. So that's essential. But it's so strange that they didn't really officially change it as recognizing it as the Eighth Œcumenical Council I'm not sure exactly how long, but it was definitely decades later that they came back and said, oh, wait a minute, we've got to change that, and we've got to recognize 869 because it
didn't look too good.
Didn't look too good. Yeah.
Did the council also address the authority of the Patriarch of Rome, of the Pope? Yeah,
there was a lot of discussion about his authority, and they pushed back against it very forcefully in the council. They didn't have I don't think it's a part of the acts, but it's a part of, the decisions of the council, the official proclamations, but it's throughout the acts. This is why it's so fascinating. You've got to read the acts of the council. And by the way, there's a good discussion going on. I don't know, I'm not that up on it, but this will help people to understand better in practice. There's some people who approach the ecumenical councils in a very, I think, limited and kind of legalistic way. Only they want to minimize the authority of the council to a certain degree, and only the written decisions and canons. But in fact, all of the council needs to be taken in context, and all of the decisions and the discussion needs to be seen in context to really understand the import and the meaning.
It's much like reading the life of the saint, or studying a saint. You want to read their life first and know what they were writing about, what caused the necessity for these writings. It's the same with the ecumenical synods. And you get a real sense of the ethos of the church when you read these things, correct?
Yes, absolutely. A lot of nuances come out.
So I learned something today. I actually did not know this about the cease of the commemoration. I was just asked about this recently, about when the Great Schism occurred. And I gave it had been occurring for hundreds of years. It continued to occur until typically the Fourth Crusade is what people state. So I've learned something. So
on one level that's true, but it's not accurate. It's not a complete picture. There was certainly on a more social level, political level, there was attempts to unification, all the rest. But the idea that the Orthodox in the East didn't know why they ceased to commemorate him,
or that this was just simply cultural and linguistic.
Which is that's why odd. Again, it's so essential we understand this council and the decisions of the council, because then we can understand what happened in 1014 and the addition of the Filioque.
So two more questions. The first regarding this. It's often stated by contemporary theologians that in the West with the Filioque, they never pushed the idea that the Father and the Son were both causes of the Holy Spirit, that they've always pushed the idea that St. Maximus said that the Father was the cause, but the Holy Spirit proceeds through the Son. But they do have official records that state the Son as a cause. Is that correct?
Yes, and that was what they were writing against, both St. Photios and St. Gregory Palamas. So the idea that they're writing against some kind of ghost or some kind of misunderstanding is a little bit hard to swallow. They were writing against what was circulating and being proposed, and for a long time. I mean, Palamas comes 300 years later or more, and so the double cause was definitely what was proposed in the West and defended. I want to say one thing that I forgot in our conference that came out, which is really important. There's this idea going around as well that in the West, the Filioque was pretty much a given, except Rome. Rome was the last bastion, and everything else around it Rome was an island of non-Filioque, and the East knew that, and we lived with it, and we kind of tolerated the Filioque for hundreds of years. This is something I've heard and seen stated online. We had a speaker, Father Philotheos from Petrovoda Monastery in Romania, who presented at our conference. We just put this online, so if people are interested, they can go and watch this. He gave a talk in which he shows manuscripts from the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th century, even after the schism in the West, major centers where they were producing the creed in the various liturgical books and everything with no Filioque, and writing against the Filioque in Paris and other places. So he gives the picture that, in fact, it wasn't just in Rome, but there were people fighting against Filioque in a variety of places in Italy and France, even up until the schism and even after the schism in the West, which is much more reasonable, right? I mean, in England and other places, they were not everybody was just blindly following the Franks. It was a process of political, power, inserting and enforcing and imposing the Filioque on the Western Church.
So this is an area that there still needs to be more research, more academic work done to uncover some of this.
To uncover that, he's done a good start, Father Philotheos. Yeah.
So you brought with you some other books. Your press, Uncut Mountain Press, has been very busy lately. The past few years, we've seen the republication of works that I know I've been really hoping for.
Yes,
The Truth of Our Faith by Elder Cleopa is one that I was so glad was republished.
Thank God.
So you brought some other things to share. So what did you do?
I encourage people to go to uncutmountainpress.com for all the books, because we've got about, I don't even know how many we have now, 30 books or something. But there's going to be a ton more coming out in the next 6 to 8 months. Really important works. Let me say that first, and then we'll get to the ones in front of me. I want you to get people to be have in mind that we're going to be coming out with a huge tome about as big as this one, or larger actually. It's called The Errors of the Latins, and it's a collection of contradictions, errors, forgeries, manipulations in the West from before the schism all the way until today, showing the discontinuity of theology in the West.
I had a parishioner who wanted to write this book.
Yeah.
Never got around to it, so I'm glad you are.
Yes. So this will be really good for researchers and also anybody who's interested. He's a Roman Catholic and he's troubled and he's searching. This will be an amazing volume for all of them. And so it's been about an 8-year project or 7-year project on the part of the author. That's coming out in about 3 months. Also coming out in the fall are a number of books by the Colivades Fathers and on the Colivades Fathers.
Wonderful.
St. Athanasius Pardos on philosophy and enlightenment. We've got a book by Father Theodore Zisis called Kolivadika, it's called in Greek, and it's analysis of a variety of issues around the Colivades Fathers.
That's another book that I've been hoping would come out.
Then we've got St. Hilarion Trotsky's second volume of his collected works. That's coming out in the fall. That's done. We've got, in the works, we've got a book all about St. Isaac the Syrian and whether the new revelations about him are true and accurate. We're going to be showing the English-speaking world a very good book about how they've misunderstood St. Isaac. And he's neither a Nestorian nor is he a Universalist. So in defense of St. Isaac is the name. The book is something like the mistreated or unjustly treated saint is the name of the book. We've got a number of my writings and talks coming out as well. We've got because the Acts will be out in about a month. Anyway, a lot of things coming out. You can go check it out in Uncut Mountain Press, forthcoming titles. Right here in front of us, we've got, as we said earlier, the Divine Service, which is phenomenal, and the articles by Metropolitan Herotheos and Metropolitan Seraphim about the Eighth Ecumenical, defending it. We've got a massive tome, Catholicism, the Orthodox Patristic Witness Concerning Catholicism. This is a work that took about 6 years and a lot of research time, and we're really indebted to the researchers who put so much time and effort to bring this about. But essentially, it's the Synaxarion of all the saints who have anything to do with Catholicism. It's the writings of the saints, the major writings, excerpts from them. It's conciliar decisions and historical events, and also contemporary theologians. So it's just a total spherical examination of what does the Orthodox authorities, which are the saints, think about and understand the Catholicism to be, instead of what does this particular theologian today or hierarch say, because he may or may not be following the Holy Fathers. We want the people of God to know these are the authorities.
Or this conciliar statement. That,
Yes. All right, and then we've got a new book just put out all about homeschooling and schools, Orthodox schools, called Formation in the Love of Truth by myself, and it's all about the imperative for Orthodox education and homeschooling and schools, and the whole history of compulsory education, and how important it is that we as Orthodox do not be led astray in how we're going to raise and educate our children. So
I think that's the only book on your table display here that I haven't picked up yet, so I'll get one today.
And then we just came out with the first of many pamphlets, which I think is going to be beloved over time. Very, short reads, pamphlets like you've seen before, but on topics maybe have not been covered. So first one is by Dr. Constantine Cavarnos, The Church in the Home, which is a very beautiful little book about what do we need to do to make our home a church or church atmosphere. And then we have a book called Born of the Water and the Spirit about the reception into the church, the patristic teaching on how to be received into the church. This is Helmet of Salvation,
which is wonderful.
A wonderful homily by Bishop Alexei of Alaska about the head covering,
really beautiful.
Spiritual examination. And we have a book from, these two booklets are from the monastery of the Paraclete outside of Athens, a really, really wonderful monastery. It's produced tons of material over the years. These are the first two that we've translated. First one is called Should We Be Set Apart from Others? Mm-hmm. This is about the stance of the Christian in regard to the community, the social life, the world. Very good patristic text. And the final one is their well-known in Greek. It's probably tens of thousands of copies of it. It's all about what is ecumenism from the Orthodox patristic view. So these are now available for parishes and people through our website. And
Fantastic.
There's many more books, but that's the latest.
Final question.
Yeah.
Very, very common for me to get a Roman Catholic who is dissatisfied with contemporary Roman Catholicism come into the parish and find theological works like this, but also defenses of papalism and Roman Catholicism on the other side, and they get very confused with the theological back and forth, and they don't know what to do. What advice do you have for someone in that situation?
So, the typical approach to Orthodoxy in the West is with the head only, and it's got to be, we've got to think we've got to figure it all out. And we think that who's going to be proved right historically? We're going to examine the Council of Florence. Well, who's right on the Council of Florence? Well, that must mean that this church is right. But this is a very narrow and an incomplete examination and approach. There's so much more. First of all, there's the experience of God. There's the spiritual life. There's the authenticity. There's the dogma and the ethos, which are inseparable. If you're only going to look at the dogma, you're only getting half of the story about where is truth, where is the church, where is Christ. Mm-hmm. You look at the ethos. And the ethos is not just the moral life, it's the whole way of Christ. Mm-hmm. I think this is the biggest difference between the Orthodox and the West, is the way of Orthodoxy, the daily, and the ethos, the outlook on how to live, all these things. There's just a chasm between the East and the West in this. So you've got to have a spherical look at Orthodoxy, and most importantly, you've got to come and see and experience the Spirit of God, because what's going to happen is you're going to have a aliousi, we say in Greek. In other words, a like internal transformation. You have to have come with pain of heart. Mm. You have to come with compunction and contrition, and it's seeking the truth, not in terms of an intellectual analysis where you're in charge and you've got it under the microscope. You're never going to find the truth like that. The truth is incarnate throughout history. The church is the continuation of the incarnation, and we want to find Christ now, who is the same yesterday, today, and forever, experientially, not just intellectually, not just who's right, but where we find the person of Christ and the image of Christ as he has always been and always will be. And I think that the pristine image of Christ is preserved in the lives of the saints in the Orthodox Church. So my typical advice to people, one of the reasons I love Father Peter is because he calls me out when I'm wrong, and I need that. Well, I need that too.
We all do. One of my typical pieces of advice, it sounds like it's in line with what you're saying, is I tell them, read 3 ancient lives. Typically like St. Martin of Tours' life is great.
Yes.
St. Anthony the Great.
Yes.
Pick another one. And then find 3 modern Orthodox lives and 3 modern Catholic saints' lives and compare and see which one looks and feels like the ancient ones. Yeah. And typically if they read St. Paisios, both English biographies are fantastic.
Yes.
And there are so many. I mean, you list them on forever, but
yes.
Is that a fair approach?
I think it's a great approach, and I say the same thing. If you want to follow the Holy Fathers of the ancient days, you've got to follow the saints of today. You cannot follow the ancient fathers or even the fathers from 200 years ago, if you don't follow the saints today. Because that's how tradition works. That's how we receive Christ. And that's how you are in the diachronic river of tradition that's coming down to us today. If you jump back, here, what happens? You're analyzing them on your own grounds. You're not following and obedient and submitting yourself. I mean, Protestants who never have any interest in becoming Orthodox, they can sit and pore over Chrysostom or St. Ignatius, and doesn't mean that they understand and live the life that they're talking about, because they're analyzing it in a way that's not going to bring them under and submit themselves to the living tradition. Like when the apostles said, we saw him, we touched him, we spoke to him, we saw him. That's the experience we're looking for. And that happens in time and space right now today. Where are the saints today? And when I wrote the introduction, we translated the life of St. Paisios, I wrote in the introduction that we don't have a reformation, a continuous reformation. We don't have the need to go back to anything. It's all, this aggiornamento and all this way of both Protestant and Catholicism is that we got to find something we lost. We got to renew something that's dead. We've got to rediscover something. None of that is going on in Orthodoxy. Right now, we read St. Paisios, it's the Acts of the Apostles today. It's the same life and power and miracles and heavenly visitations that you see throughout the whole history of the church.
And Christ himself and many saints appeared to St. Paisios, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Saint Justin Popovich had a conversation with St. Paul.
Yes.
So
that's where you start. You start with today's saints, and this is true, by the way, for Orthodox people, because you can get led astray today, even in the Orthodox Church, by various sectarian or ecumenistic rivers coming down that don't go back and do not bring you into contact with the diachronic tradition. So it's true across the board. You've got to hone in on where are the apostles today, where are the saints today, who's speaking the voice of God.
So will the Uncut Mountain Press be publishing any lives of modern saints or elders?
Yes, we're working right now on Elder Justin Perviu. We just got the Romanian text that we've been waiting for, and we're beginning the translation work.
Wonderful.
He's one of the great elders of our day.
Well, those who watch my channel know I'm married to a Romanian, so I have a special affinity for the Romanian elders and saints.
So do we. We love them. We were just in Romania a few months ago.
I'm jealous.
Moldavia is amazing. We went to Neamț. We saw the St. Paisios
Velichkovsky and the unknown saint next to him.
He's probably, I don't know who the unknown saint is, but they dug up the relics in the pathway, right?
Right.
I think that's St. Paisios. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It makes sense to me, but they don't know. I guess they don't know officially who it is.
I'll do a video on that at some point with some pictures.
It's very interesting. I don't know either. I'm just saying it's very, very curious.
Did you get a chance to go near Bucharest to Curte de Argeș?
No, we didn't actually. We only had a few days.
I will only tell you, and I'll do a video on this at some point about the saint that we named my first daughter for, Saint Filioque, the protector of Romania. Never in my life have I been at relics and experienced such grace as being in front of the relics of a 14-year-old girl.
Wow.
I've never experienced it. I told my wife, you could have locked me in that chapel for a month with no food and no water. I would have been fine. It was so powerful. Anyway, I will end the video by asking forgiveness of Father. I told him 10 minutes, just 10 minutes, and it's been a half hour. But
it goes by fast.
But I appreciate it so much. And there's so many things I'd like to ask you, but maybe for another time. So,
Glory to God. Thank you.
In the words of the great Romanian elder Cleopa of Siastria, may heaven consume you.
Amen.
Ex